Hello, my name is Fraser Simons. This is my channel, Springboard Thought. Today I'm doing the mid-year check-in tag, a good way of maybe getting back into the swing of things. We'll see. I have read, so far, 188 books. I'm ahead of my goal by 30 books, so says the StoryGraph, 63% through, 60,476 pages. My moods are adventurous, dark, mysterious, reflective, emotional, and challenging, which makes sense except for a massive chunk being adventurous because I've read so many graphic novels and so many manga and comics, whatever delineations you want to make, that they are automatically delineated into adventurous no matter what they're even about. Could be a, horrific title, it could be a memoir, doesn't seem to matter really. They just lump it in all together, so it is what it is. But yeah, definitely my most adventurous year. Pace here is mostly, again, kind of messed up from my excursions into this medium. Fast books being 24% and being overwhelmingly higher than last year. Slow books are about the same, 24%, and usually medium, I think, is more taking up the pie generally. But not this time because of my skewed stats. Page number count is around 500 plus is only 10% of my reading, which is way less than last year, but also it kind of makes sense. I have been very low energy, low motivation, just sort of picking up what I can, when I feel like it. And yeah, it's been a little bit of a rough year. So, and I also made the goal that I was going to read, less than last year, which was 568 books total. So I have done that substantially, but a little more than I would have overall liked if my mental health was even better, I guess. This year I have 5% nonfiction, 95% fiction, much lower than last year, but I just haven't really felt like nonfiction whatsoever. Genres is very skewed. I haven't had the motivation to do my own tagging, so this is just the StoryGraph stuff, and it's always completely all over the place. It's just whatever people have uploaded and deigned to label things as, basically. But overwhelmingly it's comics, fantasy, mystery, graphic novel, science fiction, manga, LGBTQI+, literary being way smaller than normal. Literary was the highest by a large margin last year. Who knows, maybe it still will be. Maybe I'll come back, who knows. And then horror, which I believe all of these stats, other than literary, is just from reading graphic novel stuff or manga or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. Format wise, 2% digital, 27% audio, and print makes up 71%. And my most read authors are not worth talking about because I have just been picking up whatever. And usually I overwhelmingly have queer and women authors, and this year not, because I dove into a bunch of series by men, and they now populate all of it except for Tilly Walden, which I've read a bunch of, and Josephine Tay. My overall rating is very low, 3.53, so I also have been kind of, not great about what I'm picking up, but that's because I had a goal where I was reading the top manga, however you want to pronounce it, and graphic novels off of lists, which was disappointing. It's almost like when I have curated experiences from other people, they don't match what I want or need. Strange. So let's jump into the mid-year book tag now. The best book that I've read before is behind me, XX by Ryan Hughes. That book was phenomenal and just a fun book to read. It's sci-fi, but it goes beyond the genre in many ways. The layout is incredible. He did it himself. He's a layout artist, graphic designer, and you can tell. Each section has, I don't know, there's maybe 5 to 7 different templates, and if you've ever laid out a book, that is a feat in itself. There's different typography. Everything is geared towards form meeting function, because the story is about a signal that reaches Earth, kind of like the movie Contact, you could liken it as, but it diverges quite profoundly after a little while. A very smart man who's not neurotypical is the most like pioneering, I guess, in the part of like trying to reconstruct and perceive what this signal is, because people don't know how to read it even. And slowly things start to come together around that. It goes places, and then the ending was particularly impeccable, I thought, because most books that center around like first contact and whatnot, they end in a nebulous place. They don't want to extrapolate what would happen after it. Whereas this does kind of both. There's like a before and an after. And the after is a really interesting thought experiment, just as much as the meat of the book, I guess. It's a very large book, but because of the layout, you can get through it very quickly. It's very readable, just fun to look at, to consume is just a delight. Yeah, I absolutely adored it. The runner-up is The Spear That Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez, a book that I talked about on the Tops and Flops with Shelley. Just a fantastic pushing the boundaries fantasy book where the audience, the perspective shifts quite often. And at one point, you, the audience, is addressed directly as somebody who's watching a play about these events. But it eventually shifts perspectives multiple times, so you shouldn't expect that all of the time. It's queer, it's dark, it's maybe grimdark in some ways, but it was just, yeah, it's pushing the boundaries, just like I think Vanishing Birds did as well. And then third place is Tiny Beautiful Things, Advice on Love and Life from Dear Sugar by Cheryl Strayed. She's fantastic at articulating emotional things in a way that is both like clear, concise, and yeah, the information design, even though it reads like it's on the fly, but it's obviously not. She's been able to edit her work. But it's just so affecting, emotional. She's able to connect with people in a genuine way. She's non-judgmental. It was just a really fantastic piece of writing. And generally I don't go in for these types of things at all, like self-improvement and advice columns and things like that. I've never read them. I've never been drawn to them whatsoever. But Strayed makes it eminently consumable, empathetic, and yeah, a singular experience for me. The best sequel that I've read this year is The Vampire Lestat. I thought it was much better than Interview with the Vampire, which I also enjoyed. Not much to say there, but yeah, it seems like they kind of let her loose. I also really liked Seven Surrenders, the sequel to Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer. It's hard to talk about this book without giving things away because it's a sequel, but I thought actually the first book was the best in the series, which is 4 books, but it is a ostensibly historical document in the future about a ostensibly utopian society that is crumbling, and the person who is documenting it is a unreliable narrator whose fingers are in all the pies of the things going on. So you're constantly questioning what is actually happening. It's very like philosophical. It's classic sci-fi in a modern take, I think. Again, kind of like a progression in the genre. And I was annoyed with myself that it took me so long to pick that book up because it was fantastic. The whole series was great. New release, I haven't read yet, but want to. Liberation Day by George Saunders. Looks very fantastic. Juan from Just One Reader talked about it in glowing terms, and I saw it on Book Outlet one day and nabbed it on sale. And the only other Saunders I had read was that famous one, Lincoln in the Bordeaux. And I liked that, but it didn't make a huge impression on me. I was very much outside of the hype train when I picked that book up. And maybe that was part of it, but also I just think the concept was so nebulous for me that I was kind of like, this is interesting and I can see why people are into it because it's like a little bit experimental and all these things are going on, but I don't actually care about America. I don't actually care about like any of these characters. So yeah, it was more of like a third person appreciation of it rather than like being able to get wholly into that text and enjoy it. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year is definitely going to be The Iliad by Emily Wilson. I adore The Odyssey simply because of her translation. I read it in high school and thought it was fine, but this translation of hers was superlative and transformative and just showed what a different translation can do. It was absolutely fantastic in every respect. And I have never read the Iliad and didn't even want to until I saw that she was translating it. So, biggest disappointment, The Man Without Qualities. Boy, that book sucked. I mean, it's an unfinished book, so you kind of expect that maybe, but there's no cohesive element that I think worked there. The man just did not. There's a through line of misogyny that deeply complicates the book and makes it even more unconvincing than it actually was. Why it is a mainstay modern classic of European culture, I have no idea. I saw nothing much of value in that piece of writing whatsoever, and anytime it started to get good, he just inserted some misogyny, and it's not even like spewing forth from the characters as ideologues, which all of them are and definitely do that. It is more about like prescribed objective descriptions of how women function and what they are doing that are objectively wrong, and yeah, just bother me to consume. So that book blew. The other one that sucked was The Glamour by Christopher Priest. I really liked, what's the famous one? The Prestige. I loved the movie, and then I picked up the book and I thought the book was doing something different but very smart. It was great. I picked up this book with Mark Nash, and he similarly said The Affirmation, I think, was excellent, whereas this one was not. This one is like, I don't even know why there's a reader for it. Like, if I was going to do a video on authors that disrespect the medium that they are working in by publishing a work that issues the reader from fiction, this would be in it. But yeah, it said nothing much. The plot was initially interesting and then tapered off, and it says more about the author than anything else. There's a few key bits that it transmits to the reader about, like, obviously how the author wants you to, I don't know, be provoked to think about and probably what they think about the medium of writing and the nature of it. But it was not interesting and it was not a good execution. The biggest surprise I had, delightful, was Our Doris by Charles Heathcote, who's a booktuber. I thought I was going to like this book anyway because it was pretty self-evident that Heathcote could write, just from watching his videos, his dissection of literature and what he can perceive and parse, and it telegraphs that you'll probably be interested in what he is writing based on what he is like conveying to you while you're consuming his content, which was a similar effect that I got from Mark Nash, and I ended up loving his work as well. Our Doris, I hadn't read anything quite like it. It's about a man who is, it's classified as like a monologue, and he is writing about his wife Doris getting into sort of wild but mundane situations that are very funny, but like exceptionally well done as well. Like, she really leaps off the page, as does I believe his name is Harold. like they're a believable couple. They are just like, the dynamics between them are so organic, and the situations that emerge from them in each chapter, which is like a different, wild thing that Doris is dealing with or whatever, that culminates into an actual very nice through line from the very first instance of what is going on with like a judging of her garden. Like she's grown something, and the group that she belongs to are going from different place to get a rating, and there's some prize that she really wants, basically. And to Harold, of course, he doesn't care and doesn't understand really why it's important to her. And his sort of bumbling negotiation and appreciation of his wife, despite not fully understanding her, is just very endearing. It's endearing throughout, and it's well written. So I'm looking forward to reading the next book in the series. I had won all of them from a draw on Heathcote's channel, so that was cool. Another surprise was Enter the Blue by Dave Chisholm. I always say Chisholm, but it's Chisholm. And that was a book that I think I covered in different tops and flops, but it is a fantastic graphic novel that is about a woman who is she becomes a teacher, but at the beginning of the novel, she is a student of jazz, and she's sort of like not vibing or getting with the program. Like she feels that she is plateaued and not transitioning into places that other people in her class are. Like they're getting record deals, and they're just sort of clicking with things more than her. But later, this is only like a few pages in, she ends up giving up that and teaching, and then an event happens that kind of galvanizes her to start picking it up. And the blue is connected to the record label, Blue Notes, where it kind of conveys the history of jazz, and she's able to enter this space, this liminal space where jazz musicians that are like able to hit a specific plane, I don't know, where they're like, I can't remember what they call it, but they enter the blue when they're like on their game, when they're doing really well, when they're sort of out of their body and playing and just feeling, the music and stuff like that. And that's when she's able to like tap into this force and kind of proceed with this galvanizing event. It's just really interesting. The artwork is fantastic. The story is innovative. Everything about it is pitch perfect. It's like a 6-star read out of 5, basically. And then the last one is The Human Target, Volume 1 by Tom King. I just really liked it. It was a strange character from DC that I hadn't heard about, didn't care about, and he's put into a noir situation, basically, where he is trying to investigate his own death. He is poisoned, and then is trying to get a hold of, like, why this happened, how it happened, all this kind of stuff. Navigating like super villainy, even though he's like pretty much a regular guy. Like he's supposed to be the guy that takes the hit and makes it so that the other person is able to fake their death, like a super villain or whatever. But instead he's like actually sick now and poisoned, and there's a femme fatale, but it's all, like there's a culmination of this weird plot that melds so well with the noir aspect. The writing is just so on point. It's just a joy to consume. It was, very fantastic. Favorite new author, I mentioned Simon Jimenez with The Spear That Cuts Through Water and The Vanished Birds. Definitely one that I am looking out for. I'll read anything they come out with. Another one is Anne Marie MacDonald with Fane. That book really blew me away. I loved it, and I would be hard-pressed not to pick up another book by that author. Newest favorite character, there's a character in Nothing to See Here, a read with Jenna Pick. Kevin Wilson wrote this book. She is just, she's really down on her luck, but very easy to empathize with. She comes out of poverty. She was going to a private school, and events conspired to make her sort of drop out, and that was like the life event that made it so that she was not able to function in society anymore. It's like 12 years later, a decade later, something like that, and she hasn't done anything with her life. But her best friend from when that happened contacts her to oversee this strange sort of au pair situation where she's looking after these kids who literally light on fire when they are, upset, agitated, whatever. So it's a strange gig. But as strange as it sounds, it's probably even stranger in the fiction. But it's so empathetic towards all of the characters concerned and has so much to say about them that the character moments are some of the best that I've consumed. Certainly this year, but in some time, despite the odd circumstance. Had the plot been as interesting as the character moments and as excellently written as the dialogue, this would have been like a slam dunk, another like 6 out of 5 book. But as is, it was more like a 4 out of 5, because everything that you think it's going to be saying, like everything that is metaphorical or allegorical about the story, is very apparent. And on the page, the plot goes exactly where you expect it to. The conclusions are exactly what you expect. So really, it's her as a character that make the story, which is why I picked it. Book that made you cry, The High Desert by James Spooner. It is a graphic memoir about being the only black man in Las Vegas, I think it was, Nevada, something like that. It was a very impactful, great read. Something that I was hoping for actually from another book, the Kate Beaton one, the Ducks one. I thought it was going to be as good as this book, but instead it was reversed. And Ducks was not that great, and The High Desert was fantastic. So that made me happy. Tiny Beautiful Things also did this, what I talked about, and also Middlemarch by George Eliot, because it was just a fantastic book to read. I just really jibed with the prose work in that book. Like, it was just excellent to pick up at any time and start consuming. It was a joy to read. The most beautiful book I've bought so far this year, and that's pretty stunning, right? This is a great cover, right? I think. What books do I want to read by the end of the year? I picked out 3 here because I think 3 is a good number to commit to. I mean, I can't imagine not finishing 3 books. I just got this in the mail, the Stygian collection. This is from a collection of AuthorTube people who, and I didn't even know this was happening until like Jolene and Brian from Bookish had posted about it. Both have stories in this, as well as a number of people I hadn't heard of. The idea of like Stygian doesn't wholly appeal to me, but I think that it will be interesting to consume. I mean, I like gothic stuff at least. I'm not super into horror, but whatever. This was on Amazon, quite cheap. It's print on demand, you get it fast. Another one, I got this, as you can see, not for resale, from Charlene Ellsby months ago. She was kind enough to send this to me because I had been buying all of her works and adoring all of them. Fortunately, I got it right when this decline in my reading happened, so I haven't picked it up yet. It's quite short, as all of her stuff is. I'm sure I will adore this, just like all the others. I have to get to it. And then the last one I know that I will get to is Mark Nash's Death of an Author in Triplicate. This is from Corona Samizdat Publishing. And I got a bunch of their stuff, but definitely Mark Nash's new book is the push that I needed to get it, along with a few Canadian works. It's a fantastic small press that you should pick up. And this book, I, again, know that I will like it. I have not picked up anything by Mark Nash that I have disliked, even in the least. As a special little shout out as well, I also read The Skulls of Istria by Rick Harsh, who is the owner-operator, publisher of Corona Samizdat. This almost made my best books of the year. It's a 5-star read. It's fantastic. It's about a man in the Balkans who's in a bar who is gregarious, I guess, to say the least. He is like the quintessential character in a bar who's telling people his story. He's an amazing orator. He used to be a historian, and he is talking about the specific area in which you are situated in this book, the setting, in a historical context, blending it with his own like virtue as a orator. It's very quick. Again, it's a pocket size, just like Mark Nash's book. Fantastic stuff. Fantastic stuff. So that's the mid-year freakout tag. Hopefully more videos are to come, but you know, I promise nothing.